The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union, lasting from the end of World War II until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. This era was marked by hostility, proxy wars, and the looming threat of nuclear conflict. The United States emerged as a global superpower, while the Soviet Union sought to expand its influence. The Cold War influenced international relations, domestic policies, and technological advancements. Military alliances like NATO and the Warsaw Pact solidified the division between East and West. The conflict's end marked a significant shift in global power dynamics. Understanding the Cold War is crucial for comprehending the modern geopolitical landscape. At the heart of the Cold War was the ideological conflict between capitalism and communism. The United States championed capitalism, emphasizing private ownership, free markets, and individual economic freedom. The Soviet Union promoted communism, advocating for collective ownership and the elimination of social classes. This divide shaped economic policies, political structures, and societal values. The American model promoted innovation and personal prosperity, while the Soviet system aimed for equality and social justice. The ideological battle extended to political structures, with the US promoting democracy and the USSR implementing one-party rule. Both sides used propaganda to promote their ideologies and discredit the other. This clash of ideas influenced alliances, developing nations, and drove much of the Cold War's dynamics. Understanding this ideological conflict is key to grasping the Cold War's impact. The Cold War was shaped by influential leaders who defined its course. US presidents from Harry Truman to Ronald Reagan guided American policy. Truman's containment doctrine aimed to stop the spread of communism. Kennedy faced the Cuban Missile Crisis, a pivotal moment in Cold War history. Soviet leaders like Stalin, Khrushchev, and Brezhnev each left their mark. Khrushchev's era saw both attempts at peaceful coexistence and escalated tensions. Other key figures included Churchill, Adenauer, and Mao Zedong. These leaders shaped alliances, influenced global politics, and made decisions with far-reaching consequences. Their ideologies and leadership styles impacted Cold War tensions. Understanding these key figures provides insight into the motivations driving the Cold War. The Cold War was marked by crises and conflicts that brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The Berlin Blockade of 1948 to 1949 saw the Soviet Union block access to West Berlin, leading to a massive airlift by the US and its allies. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, was the first major proxy war, ending in a stalemate and intensifying the global arms race. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 was the most dangerous moment, with a tense standoff between the US and the Soviet Union. The crisis was resolved with the Soviets removing missiles from Cuba in exchange for a US pledge not to invade Cuba. The Vietnam War evolved into a major Cold War battleground, with the US seeing South Vietnam as a bulwark against communism. The prolonged conflict had profound effects on American society and politics. The fall of Saigon in 1975 marked a significant setback for US Cold War policy. These crises highlighted the complexities of superpower intervention in regional conflicts. Each conflict had far-reaching consequences, shaping the Cold War's trajectory. Understanding these crises is crucial for comprehending the Cold War's impact. The Cold War's legacy continues to influence global politics today. The Cold War era was characterized by an intense arms race and space race between the US and the Soviet Union. Both superpowers invested heavily in developing and stockpiling nuclear weapons. The arms race began with the US development of atomic bombs, followed by the Soviet Union's first atomic bomb in 1949. The development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, in the late 1950s raised the stakes. The concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD, emerged, deterring both sides from initiating nuclear war. The space race began with the Soviet launch of Sputnik 1 in 1957, prompting the US to create NASA. The Apollo program and the moon landing in 1969 marked a significant victory for the US. The arms race and space race drove scientific and technological advancements. Efforts to control the arms race led to arms limitation talks and treaties, such as SALT in the 1970s. Despite these attempts, the arms race continued to define the Cold War. Understanding the arms and space races is key to grasping the Cold War's impact. These competitions had profound effects on military, technological, and civilian spheres. The Cold War saw numerous proxy wars where the US and Soviet Union supported opposing sides in regional conflicts. The Korean War set a pattern for future interventions, highlighting the global nature of the Cold War. The Vietnam War had far-reaching consequences, sparking anti-war protests and political upheaval in the US. In Africa, conflicts like the Angolan Civil War saw superpower involvement. Latin America became a battleground, with US interventions in countries like Guatemala and Chile. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 led to a prolonged conflict with US support for Afghan resistance fighters. The global impact extended beyond these conflicts, influencing political developments worldwide. Newly independent nations faced pressure to align with either the capitalist or communist bloc. The non-aligned movement emerged as an attempt to chart an independent course. Economic aid, military assistance, and ideological influence shaped the development trajectories of numerous countries. The Cold War had a profound impact on culture and society in both the Eastern and Western blocs. In the US, anti-communist sentiment led to periods of intense suspicion, such as the McCarthy era. Popular culture reflected Cold War tensions, with spy novels and films like James Bond gaining popularity. In the Soviet Union, state control over culture was direct, with socialist realism as the approved style. Education systems on both sides were influenced by Cold War ideologies. In the US, there was an increased emphasis on science and mathematics education. In the Soviet Union, education was tightly controlled by the state. The Cold War also impacted daily life, with civil defense measures and restrictions on travel and media. People on both sides found ways to resist or subvert official narratives. Understanding Cold War culture and society is key to grasping its impact on daily life and cultural expression. As the Cold War progressed, both superpowers recognized the need to reduce tensions, leading to a period known as détente. Détente began in the late 1960s and peaked in the 1970s, marked by summits and arms control agreements. The SALT-Wajman Treaty in 1972 placed limits on nuclear missiles, followed by the ABM Treaty. These agreements were significant steps in slowing down the arms race. Détente also saw increased economic and cultural exchange between East and West. The Helsinki Accords of 1975 promoted cooperation and included provisions on human rights. However, détente had its limitations, with critics arguing it allowed the Soviet Union to expand its influence. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 marked a setback for détente. Despite this, the groundwork laid during détente was important in the eventual end of the Cold War. Understanding détente is crucial for comprehending the Cold War's dynamics and its eventual resolution. The end of the Cold War came swiftly and dramatically in the late 1980s and early 1990s. A series of events in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union led to the collapse of communist regimes and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. This process began with reforms initiated by Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. His policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika restructuring contributed to the Soviet system's downfall. In Eastern Europe, a wave of peaceful revolutions swept through. The fall of the Iron Curtain marked a significant shift in global power dynamics. Understanding this period is crucial for comprehending the Cold War's end and its aftermath.